Welcome to Literary and Jury Charge Practice. We'll start out with some literary material, and this is called Flirting Fireflies. Flirting Fireflies. Ready? Here we go. Thanks to their ability to brighten the night, fireflies are some of nature's most magical critters, but in certain patches of the eastern U.S., a rare species known as synchronous fireflies really light it up by twinkling on and off together in perfect rhythm. The in-sync blinks are performed for several hours nightly over the firefly's 2-week mating season. It's a sight so beguiling that it draws people from across the country to witness it. It's like a Christmas light display in the middle of the forest, says Jonathan Manchester, a ranger of Congaree National Park, home of a thriving synchronous firefly population. It takes your breath away. Here's where to go: Tennessee, Great Smoky Mountains National Park during peak mating season. In late May and early June, firefly fans by the thousands hop a shuttle from the Sugarlands Visitors Center near Gatlinburg to the park's Elkmont viewing areas. Hot tip: avoid crowds by seeing the beetles during the shoulder season. In the days just before and after the shuttles run, free park entry. South Carolina, Congaree National Park. Congaree's synchronous fireflies aren't as well known as their cousins from the Smokies, but their mating season is about the same, late May to early June. Spot them from the boardwalk behind the park's Harry Hampton Visitors Center near Hopkins, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania Firefly Festival, Allegheny National Forest. The June 25 festival, located 15 miles east of Tionesta, Pennsylvania, offers not only synchronous fireflies but also bands, food, and programming from naturalists. Hot tip: overnight camping on Fridays and Saturdays is allowed on festival grounds at Black Caddis Ranch B&B with a $10 donation per site. Free festival entry. Hot tip: Congaree is 15 miles east of Columbia, South Carolina's capital, which has a range of hotels and restaurants. Free park entry. I have not heard of these flirting fireflies, but it sounds like it would be fun to see. All right. Let's now try some jury charge practice. Ready? Here we go. The second element of a retaliation claim under the state human rights law is that the defendant you are considering must have knew of the protected activity. General corporate knowledge that plaintiff engaged in a protected activity is sufficient to establish this element of a retaliation claim under the New York State human rights law. The third element of a retaliation claim under the state human rights law is that plaintiff suffered a material adverse action. Here, Ms. Bovang contends that following constitute material adverse action. 1. Mr. Way's communications to Ms. Bovang, to her family, and to her friends and business associates after April 29, 2014. And 2. The blot articles received in evidence to the extent that statements in these articles A. accuse Ms. Bovang of a serious crime, B. tend to injure Ms. Bovang in her trade, business, or profession, and C. impute unchastity to Ms. Bovang. I will define a number of these terms in a moment when I instruct you on Ms. Bovang's defamation claim. The definitions of these terms in the defamation section of these instructions apply with equal force to Ms. Bovang's New York State human rights law and New York City human rights law retaliation claims. An adverse action is material if it would dissuade a reasonable worker from making or supporting a complaint of sexual harassment or retaliation. Material adverse actions under the state human rights law may include actions taken by the employer after the employee's employment has been terminated, when, for example, an employer blacklists a former employee, wrongfully refuses to write a recommendation to prospective employers, or sullies the former employee's reputation by making disparaging and false statements about the former employee. Such conduct may constitute a material adverse action. In deciding whether the conduct at issue constitutes material adverse actions, you must keep in mind that not every negative action amounts to a material adverse action. Petty slights and minor annoyances do not constitute material adverse actions. You must also keep in mind that context matters and that the significance of any given act will depend upon the particular circumstances. The fourth element of retaliation under the state human rights law that Ms. Bovang must prove by a preponderance of the evidence is that a material adverse action was taken against her because of her protected activity. As I have defined that term, proximity in time between an employee's protected activity and an employer's alleged retaliation may, although does not necessarily establish a causal link between the two. In considering whether Ms. Bovang has proved that a material adverse action was taken against her because of protected activity she had engaged in, you must first decide whether the defendant you are considering was in fact motivated by a desire to retaliate against her because of her complaints about sexual harassment. If not, you must find in favor of that defendant. If you conclude that the defendant you are considering was motivated by a desire to retaliate against Ms. Bovang for having engaged in protected activity, you must next consider whether that defendant also had a non-retaliatory reason or non-retaliatory reasons for material adverse action. If you decide that the defendant had no non-retaliatory motive for the material adverse action and that the material adverse action was solely motivated by retaliatory animus, then you must find for Ms. Bovang on this element. If the defendant you are considering had both retaliatory and non-retaliatory motives for taking the material adverse action against Ms. Bovang, however, then you must consider whether the retaliatory motive was but for cause of the material adverse action taken against Ms. Bovang. In other words, you must consider whether that defendant would have taken the material adverse action against Ms. Bovang absent the retaliatory motive. If the defendant you are considering would not have taken the material adverse action against Ms. Bovang absent a desire to retaliate against her for having engaged in protected activity, then retaliatory animus is the but-for cause for the material adverse action taken against Ms. Bovang, and you will find in her favor on this element. If, on the other hand, you decide that that defendant would have taken the material adverse action against Ms. Bovang, even absent his or its retaliatory intent, or if that defendant had no retaliatory motive at all, then you must find for that defendant on this claim. You can see from these instructions that it is very important in this case to determine the reasons why certain actions were taken and the intent that motivated those actions. Defendants contend that there were legitimate reasons for the alleged adverse actions taken against Ms. Bovang. Ms. Bovang claims that the defendant's explanations are pretextual, that is, they are unworthy of belief and were not in fact motivating factors. How do juries go about deciding what was in someone's mind? Medical science has not yet devised an instrument that can ascertain what was in a person's mind at some time in the past. The state of someone's mind presents a question of fact, however, and it is an issue that you will have to decide in this case. Direct proof concerning state of mind is often not available. A person's state of mind can be inferred, however, from that person's words, actions, and conduct. A person's state of mind can be established by surrounding facts and circumstances at the time an action was taken and the reasonable inferences to be drawn from those facts and circumstances. Circumstantial evidence of a retaliatory motive might include proof that the protected activity was followed closely in time by the adverse action, or evidence that plaintiff was treated differently than fellow employees who were similarly situated. However, an employee who has engaged in protected activity, such as complaining about sexual harassment or retaliation, is not entitled to special treatment. That is, she should not be in a better position than other employees solely because she made the complaint of sexual harassment or retaliation. When you consider the question of retaliatory motive, you are not to judge the wisdom of a defendant's actions, but instead to decide whether the non-retaliatory reasons advanced by that defendant were the actual reasons for the defendant's actions. An employer or supervisor is entitled to make decisions for good reasons, bad reasons, or for no reason at all, so long as the decision is not motivated by unlawful retaliation. The issue in this case is not whether you would have taken any of the alleged adverse actions against Ms. Bovang if you were in charge. Rather, you are to determine whether the defendant defendant you are considering took the alleged adverse actions against Ms. Bovang because of non-retaliatory reasons or because of her protected activity. If you believe that the reasons offered by a defendant for adverse actions taken against Ms. Bovang are false, you may, but are not required to infer that defendant acted out of a desire to retaliate against her. However, if you find that the reasons given by a defendant for the alleged adverse actions are false, that does not necessarily mean that the true motive was the illegal retaliatory move argued by plaintiff. Ms. Bovang's personal subjective belief that she was retaliated against is not sufficient to meet her burden of proof. It is not enough for her to show her subjective belief, feelings, suspicions, or speculations that the reasons stated by defendants for the alleged adverse actions are not genuine. In determining whether plaintiff has carried her burden of proving retaliatory intent, you will consider all the facts and circumstances that your common sense and good judgment will tell you are relevant to deciding why someone acted as they did. The central question is whether the defendants took the alleged adverse actions against Ms. Bovang, at least in part because she engaged in a protected activity, and the burden is on Ms. Bovang to prove that. Sorry. All right. We will take a break from our jury charge. And try some literary. Let's see. This is called Worth the Trip. Ready? Here we go. With swirling shapes and intense colors, it looked like an abstract painting on the wall, but the carefully cut fabrics and tiny, precise stitches revealed it to be a quilt, a modern incarnation of the covers our grandmothers sewed for beds and cribs. On an Ohio River cruise, we'd stopped in Paducah, Kentucky, and walked to the National Quilt Museum, celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. We'd always admired the workmanship and beauty of traditional quilts, but the museum highlighted the diversity of today's fiber works. Some quilts showed intricate geometric patterns, others depicted scenes of flowers or animals in almost photographic detail, all displayed stunning creativity. In earlier times, quilts meant survival on the prairie, and quilting bees fostered friendship. Quilting has always been an admirable skill. Here we saw that it's an art. I know that was a short one. Let's see what else I have for literary practice. Sorry, one more time. Excuse me. All right, let's try this. This is called a hybrid for everybody. Ready? Here we go. Want to be noticed? Try driving an i8, dramatic styling, and scissor-like doors win the kind of admiration from onlookers of all ages, kids to seniors, that a Ferrari or Lamborghini might. At about $142,000, the i8 costs far less than an Italian exotic, but it accelerates like one, a combo of gasoline and electric power, taking it from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 4 seconds. Yet the feds rate the BMW at the equivalent of 76 miles per gallon. Drive with less abandon and it'll travel up to 15 miles on electricity alone. The i8 may be the ultimate have your cake and eat it too vehicle. Make no mistake, the i8 is a halo car in auto industry parlance, and BMW expects it to draw folks to showrooms, but doesn't expect to sell many. What the car has in emotional appeal, it lacks in practicality. Negotiating the wide sills to reach the narrow front seats is difficult enough. Getting to the tiny rear seats requires the dexterity of a master yogi. As for carrying cargo, the rear trunk has barely enough space for a bag of groceries. But once you're inside, it's easy to forget all that. The i8's handling is sublime with go-kart-like responses. All-wheel drive provides great traction, and the plug-in hybrid's regenerative braking is strong. The i8 is an amazing example of technology, putting to rest any notion that hybrids are destined to be dull. The second time's the charm for the Sonata Hybrid, the first complete redesign of Hyundai's midsize hybrid sedan since 2011, really nails it. It follows the 2015 redesign of the gasoline-powered Sonata, and it's been improved in every way. The exterior styling is more subdued with softer lines, but it's still recognizably a Sonata and still handsome. The roomy cabin, too, is exceptionally good looking with its thoughtfully designed dash, comfortable seats, upgraded materials, and excellent visibility. The instruments and controls are easy to decipher and use. Other automakers could take a lesson from Hyundai in this arena. There's plenty of room in the back seat too. The Sonata Hybrid shines as a long-distance cruiser and as a pleasure to drive around town with precise steering, a smooth shifting 6-speed transmission, no CVT here, strong acceleration off the line, and plenty of passing power. Its suspension handily dispenses with pavement irregularities, and minimal road engine or wind noise enters the cabin. Plus, it gets 42 miles per gallon overall, a 10% improvement. Standard equipment on the base Sonata Hybrid includes dual zone automatic climate control, automatic headlights, keyless entry and ignition, rear view camera, CD player, and Bluetooth. If you're in the market for an attractive mid-size hybrid sedan with excellent gas mileage, a refined ride, and an extensive warranty, the new Hyundai Sonata Hybrid should be on your short list. For 2016, the fourth generation of Toyota's venerable RAV4 compact crossover gets a mid-cycle refresh that's doubly beneficial because the automaker has released a hybrid version. About time, Toyota, which benefits from the updates. The most obvious exterior change is reshaped front and rear ends, which give the car a more chiseled look. The RAV4's cabin is spacious and cleanly laid out. A horizontal shelf design lends the instrument panel a luxurious feel. Backseat passengers have plenty of room, and with the seat backs folded, there's nearly 71 cubic feet of cargo space. Just the top two trim lines, the XLE and Limited, get the hybrid treatment, so both are well equipped. If sitting in the RAV4's cabin creates a sense of competence and confidence, driving it confirms that feeling. The steering feels good, appropriately light around town, but with more heft on the highway. Plenty of power is available, especially at lower speeds, and the ride is quiet, smooth, stable, and controlled. The car leans a bit in corners, but not objectionably. Last but hardly least, the RAV4 Hybrid gets good but not great mileage, and EPA rated 33 miles per gallon overall, compared with 26 miles per gallon for the standard RAV4. So because the hybrid costs only $700 more, it takes just over 2 years to recoup the price difference based on gas priced at $2.50 a gallon, and 15,000 miles of driving a year. And I don't know if I'm saying that right. Is it RAV4 or RAVE4? I don't know. Sorry if I kept going back and forth. All right, we have just a few minutes left. Let's see what else I have here. See if I have something short. And I do. This is called Get Air. Ready? Here we go. If you're among those who've harbored a secret desire to become a fighter pilot since Top Gun, Sky Thrills is for you. This Fullerton company provides the full aerial ace experience without all the push-ups and running that a stint in the military would involve. Sign up for an introductory flight in an open cockpit biplane or jump right into the World Acrobatic Champion program to get hands-on with an honest-to-goodness stunt plane. No pilot's license is required, and you'll learn that day how to do barrel rolls, fly upside down, and contend with forces of gravity some 6 times greater than those on the ground. Sky Thrills allows you, yes, you Maverick, to control the plane for about 90% of the time between takeoff and landing. Prices start at $395 for a 45-minute flight. All right, that will conclude our literary and jury charge practice.